This video is brought to you by Barbell Apparel. If you are gluteally advantaged like I am, you might find it difficult to find comfortable clothing, let alone comfortable gear. And these stretchy jeans, these aren't jeggings, guys. You can wear these out to dinner and then go straight into a CrossFit workout without having to switch them out. You can do absolutely anything in them. They're comfortable, they're stylish, they're durable. Oh, and by the way, Barbell Apparel hosts a line of Bromley merch, so go ahead and check them out, support the channel. Now on to the show. This big SOB is Tyrus, who has popped up numerous times on Josh Bryant's channel to fill people in on what it's like to train while incarcerated.
I would go to the cell block for 7-8 months at a time, man. I do like 15 to 2,000 push-ups a day. They ain't even counting the water bag. Just all day. They know one thing.
So there's no weights in there?
No. It's 23-hour lockdown. No TV or nothing. I do push-ups, water bag all day.
In this clip, Tyrus talks about the sheer volume of work regularly done by those in maximum security prisons. With all day to train, time is best passed with endless bouts of body weight movements and makeshift strength training protocols. These clips are of constant fascination to lifters, as so many prison methods seem to defy common wisdom around strength training and nutrition. Yet there is still persistent testimony from those who lived it of the incredible transformations that can occur.
There was an inmate, right? I remember when he was at the county jail, he was big as shit, probably like 6'4", 250, 260, but he was solid. Then when I ran into him like a few years later at the Fed spot, he looked like a fucking action figure. I'm talking about he had abs on top of abs. And I was like, yo, what the hell was you doing? Yo, like this motherfucker was, I'm talking about shredded to the T.
Certainly regular work like this will build conditioning, lose body fat, maybe even add a marginal amount of strength, but can it build actual, real, no BS muscle and strength that rivals that which is made in a gym? Look at the man interviewing Tyrus, Josh Bryant. On Josh's channel, he regularly features former inmates and does biopics on infamous characters who managed to build ridiculous strength on the inside. His brand, Jailhouse Strong, is a love letter to the type of instinctive, effort-driven, whole-body training that we see from those who are incarcerated. Now, Josh in his day was a beefy 600-pound benching ivory to Tyrus's ebony, and today is known as one of the premier strength coaches in the world. He coaches Julius Maddox and Tom Haviland, to name a few, and is routinely called by his world record-holding clientele one of the best to ever do it. Now, there seems to be a conflict here. Cutting-edge machines and complex protocols, advanced training systems, optimal methods derived from research, this all seems like it should be the backbone of Josh's education. But despite this, Josh is dedicated to his Jailhouse Strong philosophy. So it begs a question, how exactly do prisoners, light on space and equipment, but free on time and creativity, routinely get in shape and build strength and size, while so many of us are flooded with modern amenities and struggle to do anything? And how does someone like Josh Bryant, who's tasked with prepping human rhinoceri to break records, integrate these methods into his training? Nutrition is often seen as the biggest obstacle in prison to getting bigger and stronger. The food isn't known for being specifically nutritious for the average man, and it certainly won't match the 5 meals of lean meat and rice that the average physique insecure bodybuilder is going to adhere to.
Man, that food was generic as hell. Great value, everything, man. Worse than great value, man.
Man, it was a lot of rice and beans. Best thing you could do is get a job in the kitchen, because if you can get a job in the kitchen, then you can get access to food. Or if you have money, then you can purchase from somebody who works in the kitchen.
But the reality of prison nutrition hints at some hidden truths around diet advice and might also indicate that our sensibilities around nutrition are just more consumer pickiness that we've been conditioned to have. Firstly, the ever-repeated 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein that's recommended to all muscle builders is near the upper limit of a range for optimizing growth. That's a maximum, folks, and it doesn't mean that falling below that level is going to result in no growth. In fact, substantial muscle growth can be seen at the lower end of the recommendation, somewhere around or just over 0.5 gram per pound of body weight. So if you're 250 pounds in fat or 160 pounds in peeled, you're still looking at 130 to 150 pounds of lean mass for the average dude going into serve time. And that means that 60, 70, 80 grams of protein per day can still get you packing on muscle. Those who are motivated can get special foods from the commissary in addition to their 3 squares, so you can get mackerel, peanut butter, beans, and that can add protein to get you into the green. And as many who serve time will tell you, the best foods for growth aren't actually the high protein options like lean meat and whey powders that you've been conditioned to think.
You could try to eat clean in there, but most likely you're gonna get a lot of greasy shit. You're eating a lot of top ramen, canned chili, beef sausages, motherfucking canned cheese, tuna fish. A staple in there is taking a top ramen. You get a little bit of peanut butter in that joint. That's what we used to do. You take a can of tuna up in there, crunch up some Dorito chips, stir that thing up. You got you like a tuna casserole type joint. You're eating for survival in there. You're not walking around showing your abs off up in there. Motherfuckers ain't on no fitness time up in there like that. You're working out to be a barbarian. You're a gladiator. In case you got to handle your business. If you're bulky, it don't matter. If you're cut up, okay, cool. That's good for your broad on the street when you send home a picture. But for the most part, you're eating to try to stay full. You're eating for survival, and you're just trying to get through the next day.
If you're able to keep calories high overall, you're not going to need as much protein as you would in a typical clean bodybuilding diet where you're at or close to a deficit. Now, obviously, this is worse for body composition, but you do what you can with what you have. So forgetting about abs in the short term, the fatty and carb-filled processed trash foods that most bodybuilders avoid like the plague, they're actually really good for growing muscle, and they're magic for increasing strength.
That stuff is like a NOS booster for strength. Yeah, it's always historically.
Yeah. Well, basically, when I first started with him, I had a month where I didn't have almost any carbs, like basically just enough carbs for my brain to survive. And then he gave me my first cheat meal, which was like a Whataburger with a soda and some fries. I literally was trembling because I had so much energy. I was dripping with sweat because that response to the carbs was so strong. It was more intense than any pre-workout I've ever experienced in my life.
Now, this is intuitive. GoMad isn't used as a bulking hack because of the protein intake. A gallon of whole milk nets 128 grams of protein. That's substantial, but not as much as 128 grams of fat, nearly 200 grams of carbs, or the 2,400 overall calories that you get on top of the other solid foods you eat throughout the day. It's powerful because it's a calorie bomb. And we've all heard the legends of junk food dirty bulks from the likes of J.M. Blakely, Dave Tate, C.T. Fletcher.
The bulking diet, which was the 3 breakfast sandwiches from McDonald's with 2 packages of mayonnaise per sandwich, 2 hash browns per sandwich, 3 in the morning. Lunch was Chinese food with MSG. Dinner was pizza with olive oil, fully loaded.
And then it's cheeseburger time. Not yet, almost. I jumped ahead of the gun.
As a competitive strongman, I've seen the tactics used by the biggest heavyweights who have no earthly concern over body fat. Glenn Ross, Eddie Hall, Iron Bibby, Andrew Richards. And those willing to fat fuck themselves into bloat lords will always have an edge in muscle and strength development. Don't hit me with the nutrition partitioning effect being higher at lower body fat percentage. Trust me when I say the immense deluge of calories more than makes up for that. The fact is that the inclusion of processed food is a hazardous but powerful anabolic tool. Now keep in mind, these are also extremes. Inmates are not going to consume the nauseating amounts of food that a heavyweight powerlifting hopeful will, and the beasts of obesity that you see in multiply lifting and strongman are not doing the insane amount of conditioning and body weight work throughout the day. To someone running through hours of calisthenics, it's easy to exceed 4,000 or 5,000 calories burned in a day. So you have crippling volumes of work that creates a huge demand on the body. Fat, carbs, and salt fuel that activity while putting the body in a growth state, and the amounts of protein that you are able to consume can be effectively directed to building new muscle. I had a joke in here about it not being practical to keister syringes, but I decided that was too lowbrow for this channel. Many are under the impression that steroids are widespread in prison. Why are we talking about chin-ups and burpees? Any physique gains must surely be due to the smuggling in of drugs. Well, yes, maybe, but also no. There's a few bits of research that address this. There's a study from a Scottish prison that showed steroids were being smuggled in through vape pods. And there's this British report that talked about steroids being thrown over prison walls and being distributed by corrupt staff. Now, in the British survey, prisoners were savvy to the problems of inconsistent supply. They were worried about losing gains and tanking their hormone levels if they were left without a supply and no post-cycle therapy. And because of the inflated price of gear inside, and that it's a niche item that isn't able to be sold quite as easily, it's not quite as lucrative, it was posited that steroid use was likely seen in only the most wealthy and influential prisoners. This study from a Norwegian prison showed that out of 1,499 prisoners, 120 had used steroids within 6 months of incarceration, and out of those, all but 10 had stopped. Now, few studies exist on American prisons, just the testimony of inmates and correctional officers. This guy claims to have worked in New York prisons and called any speculation about the amount of use a wild-ass guess because they simply don't test for it. Another medical professional talked about spending a decade in maximum security prisons and said it's a non-issue as they are almost never discovered. So we have plenty of evidence that they exist inside, but it also seems that they are not as prevalent as you would think, even from previous steroid users. There's a lot of prisoners doing routine workouts in the yard, and it would seem that few have the desire or the resources to use consistently during their stay. And on that note, I should say that nobody, like Josh Bryant included, is insinuating that 22-inch arms with single-digit body fat or 600-pound benches are going to come from the prison lifestyle. These physiques we see from Tyrus, Cali Muscle, and even guys like Wes Watson exist at the intersection of genetics, work ethic, consistency, nutrition, and of course PEDs. So this video, it's not about going from the top 1% to 0.1% or becoming IFBB worthy from burpees. It's about how much any natty person can improve their physicality using these methods with limited resources. And it seems that the answer is by a fucking lot. Guys, I have been steadily grinding away at strength sports for the last 20 years, and every year I'm better than the year before. And the reason that I've been able to do that is because I can apply good training principles that A, give me enough continued stress and direction to inch me closer to my goals, while B, making it sustainable by taking into account my ability to recover and my particular needs as an athlete. Now, my basic templates, which have had wild success all over the internet, they can be found in my book, Base Strength, along with all the context and reasoning behind why I put them together that way. Or you guys can just go on LiftVault and get the Excel sheet and run them yourself. However, if you want to go a step above the template, you're going to start personalizing to your tolerances, your weaknesses, and your needs. And that's why we made Base Strength AI. This is not AI like, hey, ChatGPT, write me an effing program. This is AI that takes your input in the context of my programs and says, are you doing enough? Are you doing too much? Do these exercises suck? Should you put something else in? We've got Bullmastiff, which has its own following online. We've got 70s Powerlifter, if you're a sadist, which I run with my wife in the off season. And we've got Block, which is a little longer, a little slower. It's brand new. You can check that out on Base Strength AI. Head over to basestrength.com to find all things Bromley. Try out the app, check it out, take the questionnaire, see for yourself. Make 2025 the year you stop dicking around and get strong. There's one thing that supercharges the inmate's ability to make drastic physical changes while inside, and that is free time. It would be seen as inhumane to put a hamster in a cage without a wheel or a tiger in a zoo without some rope or tire. So consider someone in a maximum security prison who only sees 1 to 2 hours outside of their cell each day. How else could any human survive the nihilistic crisis of isolation and confinement without some regular physical outlet to ground them?
Well, what I've learned and what has helped me with the working out is it helps to reduce stress. You know, being in this environment right here, it's a lot of things that come at you and how your mind this way and that way, but every time I work out, it reduces my stress. You know, it helps me to focus on what's important. It helps me to prioritize. So it keeps me in that state of anytime something that comes at me and I get the feeling like I can't handle it, I like, hold on, you just handled this on this workout. You just did 100 push-ups a set. No, you are a strong individual. Right. So anything that comes at me, it lets me know, no, I can't handle it. So that's how workout helps me mentally.
When you are isolated and confined, training isn't just a tool to get bigger or stronger. It's something that has to exist for its own sake. It passes the time, grounds the mind, eases boredom and the anxiety created by it, and it legitimately keeps you from going insane. So there's no logical reason to conserve energy or limit work because you want to stay in some imaginary optimal range. Not losing your effing mind is a bit more important than that. Consider renowned British prisoner Charles Bronson, who you might know for his art, poetry, or books. Or you might know him for his reputation as Britain's most violent prisoner, which made him so prolific that Tom Hardy played him in an art house biopic. But when Charlie wasn't trying to escape, take hostages, or assaulting guards and inmates, he was training, and it became such a big part of his life that he published a book in 2002 called Solitary Fitness. As Mr. Bronson says, "In my hour in the cage under the sky, I will do press-ups, squats, stretching, sit-ups, bunny hops, star jumps, and I will jog around in between. The most important part of the workout is to enjoy what you do. I laugh a lot. I love it. It's my life. I'm a max secure inmate. My workout really starts from the time I get out of bed. I bury my head deep in a bowl full of cold water, then I'll blow out a quick 100 press-ups just to get the heart pumping. Being in solitary, I have to keep my mind active, so I will pace up and down my cell, and every minute I drop and I do 50 press-ups, and then jot it down on a piece of paper. You will be amazed how it adds up. Some days I'll push 3,000 to 6,000 press-ups. It sounds inhuman, amazing, but remember, it's killing time for me. It's my buzz. And it turns out that whatever short-term detriment from overtraining you might see is just wildly compensated for by the long-term benefit of adapting to monumental training volumes. In the argument of whether less is more or more is more, it turns out it's not that simple. You have to think of what is needed long term, and to get truly dominant in the arena of bodyweight exercises, you actually need to work up to insane amounts of work. The best skilled bodyweight athletes, whether they are calisthenic performers, skateboarders, rock climbers, or gymnasts, do not train 45 minutes per day, 4 days per week. They train with volumes of work that you're not likely to see with the unincarcerated individual with a day job or family obligations. To them, training looks more like a day job than a passing hobby. Having bounced around to so many different facilities over his long career in prison, Charles actually had the ability to put his strength to test after a long stint of only having access to his body weight as a means of training. When I was up in Hull Jail, I had access to a gym for the first time in years. I walked in and put 120 kilograms on the bar, an Olympic bar, and bench pressed it 10 times. An Olympic bar weighs 10 kilograms, so the total was 130 kilos. What does that tell you? Well, if Charles Bronson's claims are to be believed, it tells you that you can get very strong with enough diligent training focused on bodyweight movements.
You don't even have to do weights, bro. You can just run laps, on a treadmill or something. That gets you started. And once you get it's like a habit. You form a good habit, man, you're going to stick to it. You know what I mean? Okay. 5 times a week, and I've been doing it. And I'm not even like big like people think. That's the crazy part about it.
I got eyes.
Man, I'm just telling you. Or if I see all these stretch marks, but if I get back on some weights or something, man, it's ridiculous.
Now, the theme in prison lifestyle seems to be creativity. Many prisons downgraded or eliminated weight piles. Some say because the existence of blunt cast iron weights was a danger. Some say it's because the inmates were outgrowing the guards. Now, in the absence of a barbell, prisoners got pretty creative with finding other ways to load the body. While there are plenty of Hollywood examples displaying prisoners lifting trash bags of water, stacks of books, bed frames, and so on, you might think that this is exaggerated Hollywood BS. It's actually pretty damn true to life. It turns out that resistance can be found just about anywhere. Water is pretty damn heavy. You can get trash bags to reach 20, 30, 40 pounds of weight. Partner-assisted lifts are also an option for bigger, stronger muscles like your legs and back. You can have somebody sit on your shoulders to make things like body weight squats that much more stimulating. And if your partner is that much bigger than you, well, son, you better adapt. Charles Bronson also commented on this. On rare occasions when I'm allowed out on the yard with fellow cons, I pick them up. I use them as human weight, of course with their permission, unless it's a governor. I also get them up on my back and run with them, 2 at a time. I squat with them, I bench press them. Now, there may not always be barbells, water bags, or a partner to lift, but you always have your body weight, and as the field of calisthenics shows, that can be enough to change your physicality inside and out. Push-ups, squats, lunges, ab work can be done on any open floor space. Since these movements can't be loaded, they do have to be modified to make them more difficult. When all you have as your means of creating stress is one fixed weight, in this case your body weight, and that weight is extraordinarily light, meaning you can do hundreds of reps with it, you have to get creative to get it stimulating enough to cause the growth you want to see. Think if all you had to bench press was a barbell fixed to 75 pounds. You may start out doing as many reps as possible, and you might find that that gets tedious, monotonous, and pushing reps as a means of growth becomes more difficult. However, you might get creative and realize that there are ways you can make 75 pounds more difficult. One of the easiest, most accessible ways to make your body weight do more work for you in a set is to disadvantage your grip. Not only will using a disadvantaged grip add an element of novelty to your training, but it will force the muscles to work harder as if they were using heavier loads. For something like a push-up, you can go with a diamond grip position that heavily stresses the triceps. You can go wider and stretch the chest. You can do one-arm variations. You can do them offset. And these principles can certainly be applied to every other bodyweight exercise you can do. But this next tip is one of the superpowers that inmates have when trying to maximize growth from their body weight. And it's something that can be easily applied to regular gym workouts, although it rarely is.
Once I discovered the half rep partial, this the keep the tension on one muscle group rather than passing it on, my whole world changed. I blew up in like 2 months. In prison, I was a pretty big guy, and I did it off that prison food and the half rep partial range of motion.
This gentleman realized that when he does a full push-up, he's limited by whatever the weakest muscle is in that movement. As you emphasize a full range of motion and put an exclamation point on your lockouts, your triceps are going to be the thing that fatigues first, evident by the fact that you will struggle to lock out, then to get 3/4 of the way up, then to get half of the way up, though seemingly you will be able to move rather explosively off the bottom position. This means that the muscles in the chest and shoulder actually have a lot of gas in the tank, but the system fails because the triceps can't keep up. So to this gentleman, it stood to reason that if he keeps emphasis on the most dominant muscle during a specific range of motion, he can exhaust that particular muscle more thoroughly, and the growth in that muscle is going to be greater than if he exhausted himself doing the full range of motion. Now, this is a universal principle for all compound lifts. So you might notice that if you only ever do full range deadlifts, you might stick at lockout, even though you can continue to move a lot of weight right off the ground. Or you might notice in rows or pull-ups that you have a harder and harder time getting the bar to the finish position, though you can continuously do half reps seemingly into forever. And it begs the question, if you are so much stronger in that range of motion, why aren't you training it at some point in order to exploit the potential stress that you can put on the muscle in that position? Now, assuming any of you have access to barbells, dumbbells, and machines, and that you're following a thorough and well-rounded training program with a very clear progression based on the continued addition of weight to the bar, this might be something that you don't necessarily need to emphasize. But if all you have to create a stress on the muscle is your body weight, it makes sense to do everything you can to increase the stress, and this is one of the easiest ways you can do this. Incorporate repetitions where you are only moving through the bottom range and see how your chest feels on those final reps. That will represent true failure to the chest in a way that you're probably not going to experience if you're doing full range. Similarly, you can work only the top range and notice that your triceps absolutely explode. Other movements are not exempt from this. Take a similar approach with pull-ups, dips. If you're feeling spicy and masochistic and you want to add a little pain to the mix, try doing 21s with lower body movements like RDLs, lunges, or bodyweight squats. You'll notice by simply pulsing through the bottom range of motion before moving into the other ranges, it does not take a lot of weight to absolutely torch your shit. Now, anybody with a minimum amount of open floor space can do basic bodyweight exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, bodyweight squats, and lunges. But if you can find an appropriate surface, you can take it up a notch and incorporate dips and pull-ups, which are much more potent developers of body weight size and strength. Push-ups do not stretch the chest or the shoulders nearly as much as dips do, and with dips you're taking on your entire body weight instead of a percentage of it because your feet aren't supported. And given how big and strong your upper back is, you're probably going to have a hard time finding enough weight to actually row in a bent over position, so simply finding something to hang from is going to be your best bet. Now, if you are at home or in your garage, you might look around and think, I still need a gym membership or a special piece of equipment for that, but as these prisoners show you, where there is a will, there is a way.
We didn't have pull-up bars. We do pull-ups off of the shampoo rack in my cell. So I was doing push-ups pull-ups with my hand kind of having to clip it like this. So when I came back to gripping, I was actually stronger. And that's what's funny because I have some of my high school athletes, they're like, I don't have a pull-up bar. I'm like, that's BS. I'm like, there's something around your house. You can trees, I don't believe you. There's something you can pull up on. We used to do dips in between like the stall where you go to the bathroom, and you can find a place to do just about everything. But I will say, pull-ups and dips become your compound movements.
Now, if you imagine how potent these other tactics are for something as simple and lightweight as a push-up, imagine what happens when you apply it to a dip. So far, we've covered modified barbell and dumbbell training, partner-loaded lifts, days and years worth of push-ups and squats. But there is one exercise that is at the cornerstone of all prison training. One exercise that's so effective at doing so many things that it's treated with the same reverence that a lifter might treat a barbell back squat, and that is the burpee.
And I saw this guy, he was doing burpees, and it was the first time I ever saw him. And I said to my brother, I was like, man, what kind of Jane Fonda shit is that? So we got in there and we did them with the guy, a traditional prison, you go, I go format is what we call it.
Okay.
You go, I go. So basically, you're going to do 15 burpees. I'm going to do 15. You do 14. I do 14. Kind of a 1-1 work rest ratio.
Sure.
And I came up the first set. I was like, and right then my training, I was like, man, something's wrong. I was like, I got to get my wind up. From that day forward, for like 5 years, I probably did burpees 3-4 times a week.
Now, a burpee can be done anywhere with open floor space and no equipment. It uses multiple muscle groups. It features the benefits of push-ups and squats and planks. They're light enough that they can be done for extremely high volume, but are still strenuous enough that they can build muscle and strength. They create fight-worthy conditioning, burn an insane amount of calories, and all of that together makes it the preferred prison method for getting lean, jacked, and strong. Now, burpees are usually done in a group setting, and that dynamic adds a competitive aspect to the burpees.
Some days I'll be working out in the perimeter patrol truck. So, I'm riding around the prison, and sometimes I'm sitting on top of the hill where the rec yard is. And I see them out there all day. It'd be like, they regimented with the shit, like the different gangs and shit. Certain gangs, they'd be lined up. It'd be like 2 lines, right? They facing each other. It might be 40 motherfuckers. They lined up. One of them do some burpees, boom, go down, come up. Then the other one do some burpees. And it's like they just do that shit for damn near like 45 to an hour straight. I'm like, they be in great shape.
In a line, there's pressure to keep pace with everyone else. And when you're in an I go, you go situation, the other guy's training is dependent on you not sucking at them. So while social media is throwing millions of views at this type of nonsense, there is an essential principle that still holds true. The thing that works the best is probably so boring to watch that you're not likely to see it plastered on your feed. Now, many of you will jump straight to all of the exotic burpee modifications. They can be modded a million different ways. And that temptation to complicate something simple is not going to work in your favor. If you've been inside for 10 years and you've done daily burpees, it might make sense to throw in every twist and turn that you can think of, but I highly recommend sticking to the basic, a simple down on the ground into a push-up position, jump your feet back up, and then jump up to the sky. That is enough to do everything that you want to do, whether you're adding it in on a GPP day, doing it in between sets of barbell work, or as part of some type of bodyweight circuit. I remember reading the conditioning book of Johnny Payne, the guy who authored the BaseStrengthLP, and one of the tasks in there was 100 burpees in under 5 minutes. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you realize how absolutely taxing it is just to cycle through 5 or 6 without stopping, you realize that to knock off 20 burpees a minute for 5 straight minutes, it ain't easy, folks. And while I got good enough to sprint through 50 in 2 minutes, I was so torn up that I had to lie on my back for the remaining 3. I recommend you start training these in intervals. You can do an EMOM, knocking off 2 or 3 burpees every minute on the minute and adding a rep every session until you start to hit a brick wall. You can use the Juarez Valley method, mixing repetitions and walking back and forth, just like Charles Bronson does in his prison cell. And if you're feeling especially salty and you just want to take it out on your body, every now and then I think it's good to throw in an all-out sprint, see how many you can do without stopping before your heart and lungs just scream mercy. These methods are easy to throw in, they're super effective, and it's much more likely you're going to stick to them than the really insane volumes of burpees that prisoners do when they're partnered up and they're just trying to kill some time. But if you get through any of these workouts, you're going to see how absolutely obvious it is that anybody who does commit to those crazy volumes of burpees is going to see just radical transformation in their body. So these are a handful of tactics used by those confined in a penitentiary to build a physicality that would stand out in any corporate gym. Where we're inclined to think that having more tools is the ticket to being more productive, that actually couldn't be further from the truth. It's when we really are motivated to get something, when we're limited on ways to get it, and are forced to be creative that we actually make the most out of the resources that we actually have. And that is yet another reason why the entire concept of optimal is stupid and doesn't make any sense. It's a strange fact of human beings. If you just want a hole dug, the people that are put in solitary and given a stick are going to dig better, bigger, more pristinely fabricated holes than the people that have an endless array of exotic tools to dig the hole with and all the time in the world to do it. So instead of procrastinating by imagining all of the theoretical best approaches that you're not going to be doing, instead jump in, take the tools that you have available, and get your hands dirty. Because it's those people, both in and out of prison, that correlate with the greatest amount of success, much more so than the ones that continuously fix on the perfect way to do it. So that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.